All right, so we're going to talk about bones and a lot of talk about, oh, I would never take a GLP-1 or I'm worried about GLP-1s because I might lose too much bone. And it's a real concern, but it's not just one that is exclusive to taking GLP-1s. It is a big piece of the puzzle in women's health, and 1 in 2 women over 50, so that's half of us, will experience a fragility fracture in our lifetime. So what we're seeing is that we've got to start talking about this now, and start working to support it because bone density peaks around age 30. If you're in that perimenopausal stage, we have peaked. We are past peak, right? And we have already begun that slow decline into bone loss. And then it begins to accelerate pretty rapidly in the first 5 years after menopause. And then continues to stay at that higher rate of loss um, for the rest of our life if we don't do something to stop it. And that's why your fracture risk increases dramatically after 50. And hip fractures tend to be the thing that causes the most problems for women as they get older. So the good news is that it doesn't matter how old you are. Bone responds to mechanical stress at any age. The right kind of impact signals to your bones to adapt and rebuild. And this is called mechanotransduction. So it's this really cool process of signaling to the bone. It's like putting pressure on the bone, and then the bone responds by building stronger bone. So there are over 19 randomized control studies right now that are looking at the impact of different things on bone. And some of them are looking specifically at hips, some are looking at necks, some are looking um, at different spines, things like that, and others are looking at broadly more broader bone. But most of the studies have looked specifically at one area because different parts of our body respond differently to different exercises and different therapeutic interventions. So, the one where we saw the strongest response in the femoral in the neck was around jump training. I don't know how many of you are jumpers at this point in the game, but a lot of us have given up jumping in the last part of our life just because of pelvic floor issues and stress and all those types of things. But what they're seeing is that um, in 19 different studies, that jump training did the most to improve both hip and neck um, bone density, and they were really significant in both pre and postmenopausal women. So a lot of the research shows really good benefits in premenopausal women and then not as good benefits in post, but jumping has been shown to improve or decrease fracture risk pretty significantly in postmenopausal women. When it comes to hip fracture risk, premenopausal women doing high impact exercise actually gained somewhere between 1.2 and 4% of their hip bone mass, which what they're estimating translates to a 20 to 30% reduction in hip fracture risk over time. So if you're in that perimenopausal stage and you're doing some high density training, then high impact training, that is hopefully going to pay off for you down the line. We don't see the same impact from high impact exercise in postmenopausal women. Um, when we're talking about reps, at low reps work. So just 10 maximum vertical jumps 3 times a week for 6 months actually significantly increased the bone density in young women. Now, this is young women. We've got different ongoing studies right now in women who are postmenopausal that we're going to come back to. And then the other thing to be aware of that jumping does not reliably increase lumbar spine bone density. It actually, ground reaction forces don't sufficiently reach the lower back. Resistance training is needed for spinal density. So jumping is really important for those lower bones in our body. And when we're talking higher, like those of us that have some challenges with our back, we want to be doing some heavy lifting. So there's something called the Lift More protocol. This is high intensity resistance and impact training. This is the gold standard for postmenopausal women with osteopenia or osteoporosis. What this is looking like is lifting 2 times per week, 30-minute sessions. I'm doing this for 8 months with a 1 month ramp up. So getting used to it, building up your reps and your strength in that first month. Doing 85% of your maximum, your resistance work. So if your max is, let's say, I'm just going to use simple numbers, 10 pounds, we want to be lifting about 8.5 8.5 pounds on your resistance work. Things that the exercises that we want to be including are deadlifts and back squats and overhead presses. Those were the most intimidating things for me to start doing when I started lifting. It took me a while to get to that point, but they are going to be the thing that's going to put the most pressure on all of the really important pivot points and bone points that we need to be really focusing on in midlife. And then for impact training, we want to be doing jumping chin-ups. So with drop landing, so jumping up and pulling yourself up and then dropping, or dropping from a step, like jumping from a step and letting your body like land on the ground, not buffering that landing with a soft bend knee, which is what I've always been, with what I've always done throughout my life. Really learning to just take that impact can be really helpful. What they saw by incorporating this type of thing over the course of about 8 months in several studies is that they saw significant improvements in lumbar spine and femoral back bone density, improved functional strength, so timed up and go, functional reach, like getting up from the ground, those types of things. It used to be previously assumed to be too risky for osteoporotic women, so women who actually have been diagnosed with osteoporosis. And what they found is that they found this combination of exercises to be safe as long as there was proper progression and proper form. So before you jump, if you've got a history of vertebral fracture or poor balance or pelvic prolapse, get checked and make sure that you're getting some support around that. And the goal is to be able to squat comfortably with 15 pounds before adding jumps. And you want to start with 10 to small jumps a day and progress slowly over weeks. So, and one of the things that I've been taught to do is to do like 2 feet together, jump, 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 jump across the floor, and then 1 foot at a time, jump, 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 and then backwards jumping, and just doing 15, 16 at a time as you build up your capacity to do some jumping there. So your optimal jump protocol, and some of you may not be excited about this, and I totally understand, but it really does help. 3 sessions per week is optimal. 2 times a week still shows some benefit. Non-consecutive days is preferred. So rest days in between, right? We see that in a lot of things, that when we give our bodies time to actually rest, that gives our bones and our muscles a chance to rebuild. And consistency is more important than intensity to start with. As we're building, we want to increase maximum vertical jump height. So jump higher or jump from higher steps down. And we want to make sure we're getting about 10 to 50 jumps per session. And high ground reaction force is the key. That means that we stop with like jumping from higher ground to lower ground and allowing that boom, that intensity to hit, is where we get the pressure that we need in order to make this work, and progress your height before you progress your volume. So it's not necessarily that you need to be doing 50 jumps per session. If you're still working on just getting higher and higher jumps in your first 10, you're going to be making progress. Best jump types. Vertical jumps. So just basic effective standing in one spot and jumping vertically forward. Depth jumps. So those are the ones I was talking about, where you stand on a stair and then just jump down and then get up to a higher stair and jump down, and allowing the impact of jumping from a higher to a lower area to help build bone. Jumping chin-ups. So you're jumping up and then letting yourself down quickly, and then plyometric step-ups. So low impact. That's a nice low impact to start, where you're stepping up and down and building, and you can even add some weights there as well. And of course, because I'm a nutrition provider, we're going to talk about nutrition too, because if we don't have the right nutrients on board, then what is our body going to use to build that bone if we're doing the work of signaling to it that we want it to grow? We want to make sure that we've got calcium on board. We don't necessarily need to be taking a calcium supplement. You can be getting plenty of it from food. Vitamin D3, if you're working with us, you know how important vitamin D is, and we keep an eye on that and really encourage supplementation if we don't see you in optimal ranges. Vitamin K2, you'll see that in our Vitality Pack. We have a combo of vitamin K and D together. Magnesium and calcium are best friends. If we don't have enough magnesium, then it makes it harder for us to absorb calcium and back and forth. So there is a pretty positive association with improvements in hip bone density when we are getting at least 300 milligrams of magnesium a day. Now, of course, that can be from food, from supplements, or a combination of both. And then protein. We forget how important protein is for bone density. We talk so much about why protein is important for muscle, But protein provides amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks for bone, for hormones, and for muscle. So when we're talking about preserving bone density and muscle density as we age, protein has to be a piece of that equation. And that is at 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. That's why our threshold for most people is no lower than 95 grams a day. And for some of you, it's up to 1 gram per pound of body weight. And then there is some emerging evidence around collagen peptides. Type 1 collagen supports bone matrix and pairs well with vitamin C. Of course, you need to be getting adequate protein in order for collagen to be doing the work of it being allowed to be utilized for bone density. And if you're not getting enough overall protein and then you're adding collagen, your body's just going to use the amino acids where they need them. And so when we're pulling collagen into a supplement protocol or to a dietary protocol on a daily basis, we want to almost not count it towards our protein intake. And we also want, we kind of want it to be above and beyond the protein that we're getting from our diet, or at least if you're getting it a couple of times a day, at least one of those you shouldn't count towards your protein intake. And just have it be, make sure you're getting your protein met without the collagen and then add from there. So when we're adding it all together, what does this look like? Foundation, your weeks 1 through 4, while you're building into this, we want to do body weight, squats, and lunges, and begin like building on like just some gentle jumps, like jumping from a step down, and then adding in 10 to 20 small jumps in place. I would do that after you do your strength training. And don't do this before. You want to save it until after. We want to make sure we have plenty of energy when we're picking up heavy things and then do our jumps afterwards. Optimize your intake of vitamin D, K2, magnesium, and calcium, and get a baseline DEXA scan if you haven't done one in the last couple of years. You may have to push for it. Some healthcare companies are not getting them for women until they're 60, which is too late. We actually need to be getting an eye on bone density at least at 50. If you have a family history of osteoporosis or osteopenia, we'd want to start it earlier. We want to start looking at your bone density in the 40s and start taking active steps to protect it if we're starting to see early loss. And then once you've hit after you've been through that first month of kind of building, then we can begin to progress to maximum vertical jumps. And we can add more deadlifts and squats at a progressive load. And then you can add some of those 2 times a week, high rate style sessions where you're doing both lifting and jumping in one container during the week, a couple of times a week. And then consider your drop landings once your form is really solid, meaning the ones where you come from a higher spot down to a lower spot. And then after you've done that for about 12 weeks, so that's about 4 months, we want to get checked and see how you're doing. And in some cases, we don't need a DEXA scan for at least 12 months. And for others, we can go 24 months. Make sure you're being really consistent with your protein and then continue doing this work, because once it doesn't stick around. Like, we have to keep reminding our bodies that we really want to keep these bones strong. And so we've got to keep paying attention and doing the work of loading up on all of these minerals, the protein, and making sure we're getting the jumping and the lifting in there to help support. So, is this exclusive to people who are using GLP-1s? No. This is great for women who are in any sort of diet, whether you're maintenance, whether you're not worried about your weight, whether you're on a GLP-1, and it becomes a little bit more important when we are actively losing weight, to make sure that we're hitting these nutrient goals and these macronutrient goals so that we're providing the adequate building blocks so that the body can hold on to bone and muscle, excuse me, and allow us to move that. So hopefully that's helpful. Let us know what questions you've got, and I hope you give it a try.